down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the number one liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. And I gotta tell you, there's just been a ton of stuff going on. Some weeks it's just really easy to, put together the show, and I have, a ton of stuff to talk about. And other weeks it's not quite so much. But I can tell you that, we've had a lot of stuff going on. And I'll get to some of that here in just a couple of minutes. But first, let's go ahead and, if you are of a mind to, let's please remove our hats, put them over our hearts, and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. I have some sad news for those of you who haven't seen the news yet. But we have a bit of a, I'm seeing some buffering going on and things of that nature. Anyway, okay. Well, I apologize for whatever is going on. I don't see anything on my end, so I don't know what that could be. Just you folks, unfortunately. So, all right. Sad news this week. Sad news. And one of what I would consider to be a country great. I've been a fan of country music for quite some time, and honestly, this man has been. He's not known specifically in terms of his superstardom. He's more of a cult classic. He snubbed. Because they snubbed him, he snubbed the elite class of country music, like the record labels, the CMTs, the American music, so on and so forth. And whatever happened, with that, I don't know. But he broke out and did his own way. And because he did, he became a cult icon, kind of like some of the earlier country music stars like Merle Haggard and Willie Nelson in his younger days and things like that. Where they were doing things in music that weren't mainstream. And one of the things that Toby Keith did that wasn't mainstream today, which I don't even understand why it wouldn't be, but he really supported the troops. He really supported the troops and that kind of, supported soldiers and Americans. He was American. After 9/11, he wrote a fantastic song that is probably one of the most well-known songs from him in that particular area, called "Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue." Veterans loved him, as Tommy points out on Facebook. He was one of those people that he spent a lot of time entertaining the troops over in Afghanistan and that kind of thing. He was very patriotic, and he supported Trump in his first run, and likely supports Trump for this second run that he's got going on right now. But I got to tell you, He's the one and only star that I have ever seen in concert. And granted, I wasn't even planning on going, but a friend of mine, a good friend of mine at the time, he had bought tickets and took me to the concert because of the fact that he knew I was a country music fan and he knew that I loved Toby Keith. And so he did it for me and took me to his concert when he came into the Pacific Northwest under his Unleashed album. Outside of that, I mean, there's very few songs that I can say that Toby Keith has put together that I'm not really too much of a fan of it. In fact, I can't even think of one that I wouldn't play, period. And, it is a sad day. It's a sad week for him to have lost his fight with stomach cancer. But he gained his faith. He talked about his faith and how his faith was helping him move, helping him through the challenges of the stomach cancer and the treatments and that kind of thing. He was just, he's an incredible man, and he is one of the people that I would have to say that I would love to have met. And he wasn't one to really live on the fanfare. In fact, he kind of made a joke about it in one of his songs called "The Critic." And he also supported things like after 9/11, going into Iraq and Afghanistan and those kinds of things. He supported them. He supported the troops. He may not have agreed politically with everything that was done over there. But he definitely supported the troops, and he was American through and through, red, white, and blue through and through. And so, it is a sad day that that we've lost him at such an early age, at 62. But the one thing that I found that was really incredible about hearing of his passing. I mean, first of all, when you wake up and you see something like that, especially nowadays, one thing that my Mrs. Whiskey and I, my wife and I, keep talking about is that we're getting to that age. And I can remember being a kid or growing up and being a teenager and a young adult that, when my parents would sit there and they'd talk about somebody famous who had died, and they would look at each other and they would, there would be this look that they would get, and it would be somebody, that I knew just because of my relationship with my parents. But they would go and they'd get this look in their eyes, and it would almost seem, honestly, like they sort of knew that time was catching up. And it's one of those now, as I'm older and I'm starting to see, famous stars that I grew up with, young, old, not very young anymore, but older ones. I mean, it seems, especially in the last several years, that we have had several that have passed on. And it's a fact of life, but it gives you pause to think about your own mortality and your own time on earth and how much time is actually left in comparison to, what you have left being accomplished. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of chuckling a little bit because, of course, I'm being hit up in the chat saying I'm not old. And this, this is true. I may or may not be old depending upon the standards. I mean, seriously, if you think of somebody at the age of 50 and they're not old, and they go and they die at 55, then you know what? They were old. For their lifetime, they were old. But in this particular case, he was taken early. God called him home. Apparently he wanted his musical talents back, just like with Rush. Limbaugh, you know, Rush had talent on loan from God, and to be honest, all of us have that. We all have talents on loan from God, and sooner or later, they're going to, they're going to get called back. And so, seeing stuff like this and hearing about stuff like this, it kind of makes you take pause. And I was trying to find one of Toby Keith's songs to play tonight that would have been a discussion or a tribute in terms of his passing, like him going up into the sky. And unfortunately, in my quick perfunctory search, because the idea just came to me late to do so, I couldn't find one where he discusses necessarily death. And I think a lot of that kind of gives you an idea of who he was. I mean, he talks, about ladies and wooing the women and things like that. And he talked about, a lot of his songs were patriotic. A lot of his songs were, very, poking fun at people and things like that, especially in certain times. And then, of course, he also got into that argument, that very public argument between him and the Dixie Chicks, even though they said that wasn't the case, which, by the way, the Dixie Chicks are now called the Chicks because they couldn't deal with the word Dixie in their name. But realistically, I have to say, one of my favorite songs of his that I think I probably would have pulled up and played for you tonight. I'm not going to play a Toby Keith song tonight, but I thought about it. I did think about it, and he is one of my favorite songs. Well, there's two of them that are my favorite songs that aren't the mainstream. I mean, other than the mainstream ones, let's be honest. Like I just said, I haven't really heard a Toby Keith song that I didn't really care for. But two of his songs that have become my favorite has been Whiskey Girl, which, I mean, that's obvious. I don't need to explain that. The other one is the song called White Rose. And White Rose is sort of talks about the passing of an era, because it's in reference to a gas station that, and the passing of the gas station and that kind of stuff. So, anyway, if you get a chance to listen to one of his songs, the ones that are not the mainstream, you'll really kind of see the talent that he had in terms of his capability. And of course, all the country music fans that are country music artists that are country music artists that are out there, they what the heck happened here? Let's see if it still will pop up. Yes, here we go. They came out and they had tributes for him, because even though he may not have been mainstream country in terms of the thought process, like, for an example, the Garth Brookses of country, which, I mean, I'll admit right now, not that I take my viewpoints from entertainers, period. But the point is that, Toby Keith wasn't necessarily respected by the elite class in country music, just like many of us who are Americans right now, who are shunned by the elite class. And so, anyway, the tributes started pouring in for him, and there were a lot of tributes on X and that kind of stuff. But the one tribute that I found and that I was kind of waiting for, and this isn't necessarily an affront to her, because realistically she could be mourning in her own way, But for those of you that may not know some of the history, Taylor Swift was actually signed by Toby Keith in terms of Toby Keith's Big Machine Records. That was her first album. And Toby Keith actually saw her and brought her on to the record label, got her first album. This is all reports of it. And he essentially brought her in to the fold. And unfortunately, you know, I'm a little surprised. I'm a little surprised that she at least didn't recognize him, especially considering that you can search him up. There's videos out there of her saying that, oh my gosh, you know, that's Toby Keith. Toby Keith, I will always think of him as Toby Keith. I mean, she was starstruck with him when he first got there. And so yeah. So I was, like I said, I was a little disappointed, and I'm not the only one that was disappointed. I mean, John Rich called it out on X. And actually so did a lot of other people. Now, again, you know, if she give her time to grieve in his stead, but considering the fact that we've had nonstop 24/7 Taylor Swift for God knows, you know, the last several weeks, and it's going to be even worse when it comes down to the Super Bowl. Just the absence of any kind of discussion on her part, not even just a simple RIP on her social medias, is pretty glaring and pretty telling. You know, I mean, I don't expect the chicks to necessarily do anything. But considering he was instrumental in at least getting her into the fold, yeah, I'm kind of surprised personally. I would think that maybe she would bury the hatchet, and just do something, even just to say something. All right. So, rest in peace, Toby. I hope you get up there and you're with some of the other greats in country music, and that you ride the horses and get some whiskey for yourself and put beer for your horses and put a boot in the ass of some people that need it. We're going to miss you here on this earth for sure. All right. So, let me go ahead and get back to our normal and regularly scheduled programming. And let me go ahead and first tell you, tonight I am drinking Knob Creek for tonight's whiskey. And yeah, so that's going to be tonight's thing. And I am, of course, drinking it out of my True Grit Roots Network glass, because tonight is Whiskey Wednesday. It's like Taco Tuesday, but for badasses. So that's what I have in my glass tonight. We'll go ahead and drink that down. Yep, if you have a red Solo cup, you can go ahead and raise that in honor of Toby Keith tonight as well. All right, let me tell you a little bit about True Grit Roots Network, which, if I'd had the ability to get a hold of Toby Keith, I would love, and I guarantee you folks, I guarantee you that when True Grit gets around, when the network gets around to being able to have a country station, Toby Keith's music will definitely be in the rotation. I can guarantee you that, along with several others, several other outlaw types of country music that are out there. Not all your mainstreams for it. But anyway, let me move on. Let me tell you about TGRN. Currently, we have TGRN Blues, True Grit Roots Network Blues, and let me tell you about one of our fantastic on-air personalities and shows. Gina Coleman hosts Queens of the Blues. And Gina Coleman comes from the band Misty Blues. And Queens of the Blues explores the fertile landscape of female artists who were at the foundation of early recorded blues and celebrate music created by female blues artists up to present times. On occasion, the show will also give space for Gina's friends from a variety of, from varied creative backgrounds to share their music of most of their and their most admired female blues artists, and how, of course, those women artists influence their artistry. Now, Queens of the Blues airs Sunday, 1 p.m. Central Time on True Grit Roots Network at TGRN Blues. Once again, that is Sunday at 1 p.m. from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. It is the Queens of the Blues, hosted by Gina Coleman. You should check it out. Part of our Sunday lineup right on True Grit Roots Network, tgrn.net. You can go to our website and either download our app or find us in the Live 365 catalog of internet digital radio stations. Once again, that's TGRN, True Grit Roots Network, TGRN Blues. And you can find us on the web at tgrn.net. True Grit Roots Network is based out of Austin, Texas. And of course, I am a part owner in that endeavor. I also noticed that somebody in the chat, I think it might have been 3 Chevy, saying, hey, why can't you pump TGRN music into the stream? And I would love to be able to do that. There's only one singular problem, and it's the same problem that would be if I were to use somebody else's song, like Toby Keith, like Trace Adkins, like some of the music that I've played here on this station. The challenge here is that we want to get the artist paid. And the only way for the artist to get paid is to pay their royalties. Now, when we run it on a station such as TGRN, we are, presumably our advertising budget would be able to pick up and pay for the royalties for all of the songs that we play for all of our artists. We want to make sure these talented people get paid for their efforts. We can't just go and play it just for fun. Even if I had carte blanche copyright, that would be great. But I'd still want to get these folks paid, and then there are legal ramifications with it. So that's part of the reason why all of the music that I use is part of what's called the Creative Commons, which is essentially artists go and they throw out their music into the ethosphere as a public license to be able to play it on different things. And so, yeah, that's part of the reason why I can't just go and pipe it into the stream, although I would love to. And believe me, we're working on some things, potentially being able to do something with the streams and doing something with TGRN, but we're a little ways off from that. So anyway, all right, enough about that. All right, let's get on to the program. All right, so obviously some of the biggest news that has come out was Nevada had their primary. And, well, okay, hold on. Coco Dominki asks on Rumble real quick, is that when it becomes elevator music? Technically, no. Elevator music has its own set of licensing and stuff, and pretty much anything that you play in public, you are supposed to be paying for. But unfortunately, I mean, not everybody adheres to the law, and that's something that we at TGRN for sure want to watch. But anyway. Okay, so Nikki Haley, of course, losing the Nevada primary. Now, for those of you that don't really understand, Nevada is one of those weird places. I mean, we could say weird places. They have two sets of ways that the Republican Party goes and selects its candidate. And the first way is the state does a kind of like a voting primary. And you have to qualify for that ballot in order for that to happen. Well, that's what happened on Tuesday. And Trump actually didn't even bother to get qualified for the ballot. Neither did like Vivek Ramaswamy or any of the others. I mean, some of them did, but not everybody. But anyway, the point being is that Nikki Haley lost the primary to literally none of these candidates. I mean, how much of a signal do you actually have to have, folks, to know that your political career, at least as far as going to the level of becoming president, is just shot down by losing? And it wasn't even like she lost by, maybe 2 points. She lost literally on almost a 2-to-1 ratio. A 2-to-1 ratio for this. And she got trounced. And so if you're expecting, and she's staying in it. I mean, she's staying in it. She's going to stay in it until at least South Carolina, because she thinks that South Carolina is going to do something for her, even though all of the polling out of South Carolina has Trump leading by double digits over her. But she is going to hang on for as long as that money is is flowing in from those big ass donors, especially those big ass Democrat donors that don't want Trump to show up on the ballot. She's gonna stay in, and she's gonna keep it going, which I personally think is funny. Now, the thing about it is that many people are looking at that as a nod to Trump, because of the fact that it was none of these candidates, which basically meant none of them that showed up on the Nevada ballot for it. Now, the real vote for figuring out who Nevada is going to pick, or the Nevada GOP is going to pick, is actually coming up tomorrow. It's the Nevada caucuses. And, I explained this before on an earlier program, where they actually broke. It had something to do with some state law, and the GOP party in Nevada kind of went, you know what, we're done. And so they decided to go to a caucus setup, even though the primary still occurs in Nevada. It doesn't really mean anything, which hence the reason why Trump didn't want to go ahead and get his name on the ballot for it. But Nikki, I'm sorry, sweetheart, you're failing. You're failing. I mean, I would love to say, that you're doing well, but you're not. You're not even close, and you just need to bow out. It's sort of like Chris Christie mentioning that he will still run for president. And he's attempting, or at least he's talking about it. I saw this article. He's talking about running under the No Labels campaign for being president. It seems like a lot of people are trying to get away from the Republican Party and maybe even the Democrat Party, because that was the other thing that happened is South Carolina had their Democrat primary, and of course Biden was touting, yay, I won in South Carolina, and I'm going, no, you didn't win because there was no competition. It's kind of freaking, to sit here and announce that you're a winner of something, you almost have to, have competition, and there really isn't any in the Democrat Party. Which, under most cases, believe it or not, and traditional thought process is, hey, we've already got the incumbent in here, in the office, and so we can't really run anybody else because that would indicate that, of course, the party is not happy with the incumbent. Well, the polling shows the party is not happy with your incumbent. So why they're sitting here and like, maybe, you know, even forcing him to like tout. I mean, I personally think that as far as I'm concerned, you know, if you're the incumbent, you might as well just like not have any competition. I mean, let's be honest. Even with an incumbent like Joe Biden, Joe is just a monstrosity of a failure, and he needs to honestly, he needs to step aside. In fact, I don't know if anybody saw, but he actually had a complete brain fart in front of the cameras again when talking about Hamas and everything else. And I'm sure you've seen the videos. They're running all over the place. But yeah, his cognitive decline is getting worse. For anybody who's thinking that you're going to get 4 more years out of the Bernie, Weekend at Bernie's actor who, you know, was standing up and, anyway. I'm just, Anyway. And Daybreak, yes, I do watch Rumble. I'm looking at you right now. I'm seeing you. Got my eye on you. There you go. All right. So yeah, I don't see where, I don't even understand where the Biden administration or in the Bidens, anyway. All right. So on the heels of this thing in Nevada, we're starting to hear some rumors running around about the RNC chair, Ronna Romney McDaniel, by the way. She's like a cousin of Romney's or whatever. But anyway, she's supposed to step down after the South Carolina primaries, according to a report. Now, she is, let's just say, bad at her job. She just is. She's bad at her job. And so, yeah, I know. You know, it's funny. I'm sorry. I gotta bring this up. Yeah, we're gonna take a freaking train ride. In fact, I don't even remember what my train is. Train of thought just got off the. Oh yeah, here it is. Just got off the tracks. Train got off the tracks. Here we go. But Daybreak over on Rumble is saying, I meant not distract you from your talking points. Sometimes I know you guys can see it, where I'll sit here and I'll look and I'll just kind of chuckle or maybe get a little smirk on my face. It's because the Rumblers have gone and gotten off the tracks and gone on to something else. And I try to avoid it, but occasionally it does come up. Anyway, that's part of the fun of doing a live show, is that occasionally I go and I look up and I'm like, oh crap, you know, like in the back of my mind. Anyway, getting back to my talking points now that I've gone off the rails. Ronna McDaniel, she's getting a lot of flack, which, I mean, again, let's face it, her tenure past the Donald Trump selection, you know, in 2016, everything kind of since then has sort of been a bit of a mixed result at best and a failure at worst. So I'm just sitting here and thinking to myself, okay, you know, it is time for her to step down. Now, according to this report in Fox News, you can read on the bottom, McDaniel is the longest serving Republican National Committee chair in modern history. And so I just got to know what took so long. Now, the funny thing about this entire stuff, and Ben Shapiro was talking about this today, is the fact that there's been a lot of what appeared to be animosity between Ronna McDaniel and Donald Trump, and that this is Donald Trump's, Republican Party. And the thing about it is that Ronna McDaniel did a lot of stuff for Trump. At least that's the way that, you know, Ben Shapiro laid it out. And unfortunately, I mean, I got to admit, if you're a Trump person, like within Trump's orbit, and you screw up, yeah, you're going to get kicked to the curb. I mean, let's just face it. He is one of those types of people that realistically, you got to be on point all the time. And so sometimes you just have to accept the fact that that's going to be the case. Well, Ronna McDaniel not only lost races in terms of the Senate and the House and things like that, but she also went and reportedly bought something along the lines of like $70,000 in flowers. Who the hell is doing that? I mean, seriously, what the hell? You don't have to buy flowers for a freaking, Republican National Committee. I mean, it's just, yeah. Anyway, so there is an RNC spokesman that is apparently denying this report. And the New York Times is the one that reported that she told President Donald Trump that she would resign after February 24th. According to two other people familiar with her plans. Well, all I'm going to say is right now, all of this stuff is rumor until she actually does it. Okay. So, let's just dispense with the formalities. While this sounds like a good thing, and it sounds like a positive thing, and it sounds like it might happen. Until it actually happens, let's just throw like the Dan Bongino 72-hour rule on this thing and just say, I'll believe it when I see it. Okay? I'll believe it when I see it. So yeah. And to answer the question, Coco Dominki asked, when are the South Carolina primaries? It's February 24th is when they're coming. All right. Now, the other big, huge, massive thing that has happened here, of course, was the impeachment vote for Alejandro Mayorkas. Okay. And so, yeah, that didn't go quite as planned. So the House voted to impeach, because as you recall, in the Constitution, the House has singular power for impeaching folks, federal officials. Pretty much covers just about everybody, by the way. But apparently 4 Republicans in particular, according to this piece in the Daily Caller, they voted against impeaching Alejandro Mayorkas. Now, I heard some of the reasons as to why they didn't impeach them, ranging anywhere from the fact that they didn't think that there was anything there to, well, there wasn't any crime at all that was outlined in the impeachment documents. And they're actually, just so you understand, and Colleen pulls this up, okay? Just so you understand, originally, before the end of the vote, there was a potential where it could have been locked out completely, to where they wouldn't have been able to vote it again. But as she points out, Representative Moore changed his vote at the last minute. He voted no at the last second so that the House Republicans could actually bring the vote up again. And, this sounds like it's a really fine line. You got to remember, in the current House, we have a very, very fine majority here. But this was a chess level kind of move for Moore to do this, because now what they can do is once Scalise comes back from his working from home because he's getting cancer treatments. Scalise comes back and he can he can now take part and potentially push them over the limit, because again, for the impeachment process, all they need is a majority. That's it. But the 4 Republican votes were Representative Tom McClintock, Colorado Representative Ken Buck, Wisconsin Representative Mike Gallagher, and Utah Rep Blake Moore. Now, Blake Moore, of course, did it for his reasons, to get it so that they could actually bring it up again on a vote. Because if they had tied in a 215-215, it wouldn't have allowed the House rules wouldn't have allowed it to come back up. Now, I want to take a second and talk. The Dems were doing everything they could. They actually even grabbed somebody from the hospital, like had him bring an Uber, and then they paid for a car for him to go back to the hospital. And during the time that he was actually in the house, they were like monitoring his health. Monitoring his health in order to get the number that they needed in order to vote this thing down. But the reality of it is that, okay, it does have an opportunity to come up for a vote. And in fact, Senator Johnson has also said that, this is just a minor setback, that he believes that Mayorkas will be impeached soon. But I want to take a step back from just this, and I want to talk a little bit about the idea of impeachment. Now, impeachment, of course, comes from the Constitution, and I have a link in the show notes that I think you guys would really be interested to read, because of the fact that, and this is in Article 1, Section 4, and this is what Article 1, Section 4 states: the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, this particular article is actually a short essay that kind of delves into the idea of what impeachment actually is. And Mark Levin kind of talked about it on his show last night. But what a lot of people seem to believe is that although they haven't committed an actual crime, that these individuals can not be impeached. And, again, I kind of go back to the whole thing with Trump, because that's one of the arguments that I hear people on the right talk about, is that, well, Trump had a perfect phone call and he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do anything criminal, unlike Biden. And the fact of the matter is that just like an indictment, an impeachment can happen for just about anything. Now, traditionally, the thought process within our government and within our politicos has all been, well, impeachment really should be used for something that is being a nefarious and a very bad thing, or something that they did, that is just beyond it. Like, for an example, getting getting oral sex in the White House, in the Oval Office. That was an impeachable crime. But here's the thing, is that while 2 crimes are literally listed, treason and bribery, okay, the other high crimes and misdemeanors is the part in particular that a lot of people seem to gloss over. And the fact of the matter is that in this essay, they were talking about the idea of impeachment actually included things like not being able to actually convict somebody of a crime. Okay. but that what they did while in office was maybe something as meaningless, or what would be normally meaningless, as a dereliction in their duty. And so this is I'm sorry. Something in the chat. Apparently I did. It's when I mentioned the oral things. The action in the White House. Anyway, sorry, I got distracted. Once again, another train. So here's the thing, is that part of the discussion that happened while they were writing this, in particular within the Constitution, is they were discussing things like what kinds of things are we talking about? And this is what the essay sort of goes into. The idea of the term high crimes and misdemeanors, according to the essay. And by the way, let me run down real quick. So this is an essay by Stephen B. Presser, who is the Raoul Berger Professor of Legal History at the Northwest University School of Law. And he writes in this essay that high crimes and misdemeanors was a term of art used in English impeachments. Now, keep in mind, we get a lot of our stuff from England. Gee, I wonder why. But a plausible reading, which is supported by many scholars, is that the grounds for impeachment can not only be the defined crimes of treason and bribery, but also other criminal and even non-criminal behavior, amounting to what would be considered a serious dereliction of duty. That interpretation is disputed, but it is agreed by virtually all that the impeachment remedy was to be used in only the most extreme situations, a position confirmed by the relatively few instances by which Congress has used the device. Okay, so what he is saying there is that essentially the overarching high crimes and misdemeanors is sort of a umbrella for things up to and including things that normally wouldn't be, considered a really big deal in some cases. And in this particular case, I would say that regardless of whether Joe Biden actually, took bribes, okay, just the mere fact, and Mark Levin had talked about this on an episode several months or weeks ago with regards to impeachment, we could easily impeach the man for his dereliction of duty at the border. We could easily impeach Joe Biden for the fact that he is refusing to enforce already pre-existing immigration law. That is a dereliction of his oath of office and his duty, because he is the highest ranking officer in the federal government, law enforcement officer in the federal government, and he is refusing to do what he is supposed to do. And so, this essay sort of it gives you the indication that we're even dealing with things like the whole idea of, Trump's impeachments. The two impeachments that he went through, there were no crimes that were attached to them. And that's the thing, is that the crime doesn't have to be like a physical crime. It could just be as simple as the fact that they neglected to do their duty, their sworn duty to uphold and defend the Constitution and to perform their duties to the best of their ability. And so the idea, which was given by a couple of the 4 Republicans that, said no, was the fact that they essentially didn't see any crimes that were listed in the impeachment articles. You don't have to have a crime in order to necessarily impeach someone. Now, there could be a problem when you get to the Senate in trying to get them removed from office. And that is a little bit different. Okay. But the impeachment process itself, if you think of it, it was sort of like being a censure in the House of Republicans. You kind of got or in the House of Representatives, you kind of got a slap on the wrist. Okay. So, I mean, impeachment technically could be just about anything. Like they say, you can go and, the name's escaping me. Darn it. You can indict. Yes. You can indict a ham sandwich, but that doesn't mean that you're actually convicted of anything. I mean, it's a black mark, as Buddy on Rumble points out. It's a black mark on your record, just like an arrest without a court conviction. I mean, that's kind of what we're at here. So, realistically, that's kind of the case here in terms of the impeachment process. And so impeaching Mayorkas or not impeaching Mayorkas, because of the fact that we're dealing with a, issue where people are like saying, okay, well, Mayorkas, didn't do anything wrong. All he's been doing is following the orders of his superiors. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, you could say that, but realistically, I mean, he could get impeached. You might as well just go move forward. I mean, right now, pretty much the whole standards thing is tossed out at this point. So yeah, I mean, our original standard was not to impeach anybody unless it was something completely serious, but obviously making a phone call and suggesting to someone to help them out in a potential illegal crime like bribery is an impeachable offense now. So, as Dan Bongino talks about, old rules, they're out. New rules are in. Old rules gone, new rules here. And so these are the new rules that the Democrats have decided to bring to the table with regards to this, is that you can impeach over a freaking phone call with hardly any evidence of anything whatsoever. I mean, Mayorkas is basically following what Joe is saying. So me personally, I mean, impeaching Mayorkas and actually impeaching Joe Biden at this late stage in the game is sort of questionable at best. If it would even, all it would do is just take up more time for it to sit there and distract our Congress from being able to do other important things, which would include stuff like the stupid ass border bill that's been put forth in the Senate, which isn't a border security bill at all. I'm just going to tell you that right now. It's another omnibus package. I mean, anybody that has even remotely seen some of the leaked information about it, it's pretty much an omnibus package, but it comes on the heels of something like this. And for those of you that don't think the border is just an open sieve for these folks, you obviously haven't been seeing some of the information that's been running around. I mean, they even have video of Chinese immigrants. Sorry, they're not immigrants. They're not migrants. Chinese aliens coming around the border wall, following a freaking TikTok map. Okay. a TikTok map. And I just, how would they get that information? It's honestly, how did they get that information? Well, it's because the cartels own the border and they're making millions of money off of this, getting people into our border. Well, this came out. The CBP has reported that it's already exceeded 1 million entrants since October. Now, those are the ones that we know about. Okay. Those are the ones that we know about. And apparently, same period last year had just a little under that. There was 100,000 less last year, according to this article. Well, I mean, yeah, this is kind of the thing in terms of the border. And this border bill, by the way, they freaking, it's supposed to secure the border, but as I told you on the last episode, they actually have made it to where that wasn't security. They wanted more money and more administration level border patrol and judges so they can speed things up. In the words of Ron White, they wanted to install an express lane for this. And yeah, so the good news is, though, that even though the Senate Republican or the Senate border bill came out and, you know, Chuck Schumer and the rest are all sitting there talking about, you know, this wonderful bill, this wonderful border bill. In fact, Biden has even been quoted as saying, well, I need Congress to tell me that they can do this. Yeah. There are Senate Republicans that are now poised to block the border deal ahead of a key vote, according to this Epoch Times report. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell told reporters, we have no real chance to make a law. Now, Speaker Johnson has already said that, yeah, this thing is DOA as soon as it hits the House floor. And for those of you that don't understand how our government works, you have two sides of Congress. You have what they call the upper chamber, which is the Senate, the lower chamber, which is the House of Representatives. And both houses actually have to agree upon a bill before it is considered passed. This is part of the reason, and hold on to that thought, but this is part of the reason why I get so pissed off at freaking mainstream media outlets that are saying things like, the House passed a bill, it's going to become law. It doesn't become law unless the Senate has agreed upon it and has voted on it and has passed it as well. This is part of the reason why having a split between the House and the Senate is actually good for the American people. Okay? It is actually good for the American people to not have one party in control across all branches of government. And of course, you know, we know the judicial branch is sort of set based off of their lifetime appointments. But the key here is to not have the same party in control across all three sets, meaning the president, the House, and the Senate. Now, a lot of people would argue with me and say, no, that's not the best position to be in, but it actually is. And the reason why I say that it is because of the fact that none of these representatives that are out here that are doing this supposed good work, these career politicians who have been in government for longer than most of you may have been alive, I'm not saying all, but most, these people are part of the political elite, and they are no longer working for the American people. And this is what Americans are starting to find out in this being 2024. They're starting to find this stuff out. And they are starting to realize that the DC elite has become what the founding fathers were afraid of, which is essentially a ruling class that is far away from the people, that is doing their bidding, and doing the bidding of the other people in the ruling class, which in this case are a whole bunch of rich Democrat donors and corporations that are mostly woke. Not all of them, but most of them. But the point here that I'm trying to make with all of this is that it is actually a good thing. It is actually a good thing for us to have these razor thin majorities, for each party to have control of certain areas of the government and not any one particular party having everything. Because that turns into, well, it's good when you want some things passed. It's not good when you have things that are not good being passed. So the whole idea that the Senate Republicans are blocking this bill, I think is a good idea. But again, it was going to be dead on arrival in the House, which is, a good thing, to be honest. But here's where the border wall and the whole border thing, comes around to, and what a lot of people don't understand with this. Okay, let me see if I can break this down for you just a little bit here. Everybody's talking about bringing these illegals in. Okay. And the idea of bringing the illegals in, and what's even worse is like shipping them off to the Dem cities. This is sort of playing within their hand. You know, the whole demographics is destiny that the left keeps talking about. And here's the thing is that Democrats know that if they can increase the amount of population in their districts, then they essentially grow the power in those districts. It doesn't necessarily have to deal with voting, okay? Although voting is a strong ally, but it has everything to do with how many people you have in your districts and your states when it comes time to the census. Now, the past census that we just had in 2020 took away a vote or two from certain states like California and New York because of the migration patterns of Americans that actually went to places like Florida, for an example, who gained it. Okay. But this is the thing, is that everything, when it comes to apportionment of federal funds, when it comes to apportionment of the House seats, and when it comes to apportionment of the Electoral College votes, it all gets derived from the census. And so here's the thing, is that as long as these people keep coming in, and this was one of the things that Trump attempted during his time in office from 2016 to 2020, was he attempted to avoid the use of illegal and undocumented people in the country to head toward the census. He, if you recall, he said that he wanted only U.S. citizens to actually be counted in the 2020 census. And the Democrats went nuts. And the reason being is because they know, as well as everybody else who actually has been up on the Constitution, knows that you cannot have the census without counting every single individual person, because that adds to the Democrats and their desires of more power. Now, the other challenge that we have with that, I mean, first of all, just to make sure, I'm assuming that all makes sense, because pretty much, I mean, my audience is like the most intelligent audience in all of internet fiefdom. But that being said, does that pretty much make sense? Okay. And I'm getting reports from Buddy that Schumer has actually canned the bill for now, which is a good thing, actually. That is news. News to me. But here's the thing that is the other piece to all of this, okay? Which is that the idea of bringing in all of these people will also help to increase the voter base. Now, the argument from the Dems against this is pretty much that, well, in federal elections, you know, illegals can't vote, which is true. But then you get places like 17 states that have handed out driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. And for those of you that are not following my track here, the driver's license is the primary ID being used for everything, including voter ID. Okay, this is part of the reason why I advocate that the U.S. passport should be the only acceptable ID for federal elections. Now, state and local elections, you know, there are some states, there's a couple states and especially a couple municipalities that have actually opened up their voting for whatever immigrants happen to be there, illegal non-citizens, essentially. But that's the direction that these folks are going. That's the direction. And Biden has actually, according to this article in the Daily Wire, he actually is calling for this. Biden demands, this is the headline for those of you on the audio, okay? Biden demands illegal aliens that he has let in get a pathway to citizenship. So he's essentially saying that, hey, I let you in illegally. You broke the law to come across the border. Already, you are a criminal by breaking the law. And I showed you the federal statutes not too long ago in terms of aliens coming across the border, where it is a felony and they can get anywhere from 6 months in prison at the minimum for the first offense and up to $250 for a fine, to up to 2 years in prison and a multiplier of how many times you've violated the law in terms of a fine. But here's the thing, is that he is now demanding, just like Barack Obama did, if you recall, the whole Dreamers idea from the Obama era. The Dreamers, you know, we've got to give them pathways to citizenship for the Dreamers who came across during the Obama era. He's demanding illegal aliens that he let in get a pathway to citizenship. And the reason being is because just like what they have done with the African American vote or the black vote, and the Mexican American or the Hispanic vote, they have decided that if they can bring these people in and they can woo them with money, with benefits, with all this different stuff, that they can keep them driving or keep them on the Democrat voting plantation for as long as possible. And so here, what he can say is, hey, if he gains the way to get these illegal aliens paths to citizenship, he can then claim that I am the great Messiah helper of you. The Republicans don't want to do this, and I do. I can bring you in and get you citizenship. This is the same thing that Dick Durbin was talking about in terms of allowing illegal aliens to serve in our military when Dick Durbin himself may not know this, but I can tell you from personal experience, I had to stand up and hold my right hand up and swear an allegiance to the Constitution of the United States of America. How can an illegal person who has no allegiance to this country do the exact same thing when they enter into the service? And this is why this is the overall Democrat plan. They talk about this being a demographic destiny. They talk about this. Yes, we can replace them. Dan Bongino has constantly put up the New York Times article. Yes, we can replace them. He does it all the time on his podcast, and that is exactly what they do. This is the goal of the Democrat Party. And now, again, we had 2020 was the census. 2030 is the next census. If we don't get rid of these illegal aliens that are here, that are causing havoc in the New York City, in Chicago, in all of these places, I told you about this last episode where I was talking about how the illegal aliens commit crimes in New York, but they head to Florida to spend the money because Florida's warmer. They head to Florida to spend their money, and then they don't commit the crimes down there because they'll get caught, thrown in prison, and potentially deported. This is part of the plan. This is part of the plan. All right. So I'll let you guys know that. Okay, let me see here. What's next on the docket? All right. So we're going to take a second, scoot away from American politics. We're going to jump into some international stuff. And so one of the things that, of course, we've been continually talking about, those of us who are on the side of the American people, keep talking about things like this. Oh, good night, Colleen Birmingham. Good night. Okay, so one of the things that we have constantly talked about in terms of being on the constitutional side of things, those of us who are constitutional conservatives, we keep talking about the fact that we want single issue bills. Okay? Excuse me. Single issue bills. Well, our illustrious named President Biden doesn't want single issue bills. Gee, I wonder why. It's because he can't get things through. But unfortunately, because we don't have a veto-proof majority in Congress across both houses, he threatens to veto a bill that comes across that is specifically for just Israeli aid. Now, one of the things that you'll notice as a part of the border bill, of course, is that the border bill was what had, now that it's been killed by Schumer, but the border bill had a carve out for Israel aid, a carve out for Ukraine aid, a carve out for the money going to supposedly secure the border, but it actually wasn't doing any kind of securing at all. But one of the things that the House has been talking about is, hey, we're going to go ahead and put together just an Israeli aid package. Now, for those of you that don't subscribe to the Nancy Pelosi, we got to pass the bill in order to find out what's in it, which was also mimicked or mirrored by the Senate Democrats here recently. The whole point in having single issue bills is to make sure that everybody not only can have time to read the damn thing, but also have time to understand and comprehend exactly what it is that they are asking for in the bill. Now, he has now stated that he will veto a single issue bill if it is brought to him with regards to Israeli aid. Now, of course, the border bill, like I was just saying, had everything in it. But here we are with Biden. The Office of Management and Budget took aim at the $17.6 billion Israel bill that was sent for a vote in the House this week, while the Senate is teeing up a vote on a bipartisan bill that includes funding for Israel, Ukraine, and border security. The White House said the administration spent months working with a bipartisan group of senators to reach a national security agreement that secures the border and provides support for the people of both Ukraine and Israel, while also providing much needed humanitarian assistance to civilians affected by conflicts all around the world. Instead of working in good faith to address the most pressing national security challenges, this bill is another cynical political maneuver. Okay, let me break this down for you really quick. All right. This is how they get pork passed. This is how DC hides all of this additional crap in order to make it. What they do is Dan Bongino says this on multiple occasions. Politics is all about sound bites and snapshots. Okay. So here's the thing, is that what they do is they go through and pass these omnibus pork-filled freaking bills because of the way that they write stuff up, and they follow the whole Nancy Pelosi idea of, well, we have to pass the bill in order to know what's in it. Okay. I'm telling you right now, right this second, if Donald Trump, and I think he could gain votes off of this, if Donald Trump were to stand up and say, you know what? If I do not have if I end up in a situation where there is no veto-proof majority in the Congress, I will veto every single bill that comes by that is not specifically designed for one singular issue. That would be something I would do if I was president. If I was running for president, that would be one of the things that I have. If I can't read that bill and know exactly where all of that money is going and what it's going for in one singular issue, a simple, small thickness. I don't want these 5,000 page bills. I'd want one issue. You tell me exactly what you're doing, or I'm vetoing it. Guaranteed. I'm telling you, I think Donald Trump, that would be an awesome thing for Donald Trump to do. To basically say that this is exactly how I'm going to run it. You guys send me a bill, and if I can't read it in 5 minutes and know exactly how much money and where it's going, I'm vetoing the damn thing. To do that, and I'm telling you, that would be incredible to have a president who would have those kind of cojones. I'll use the Spanish word for Coco Domingue and her son. Those kind of cojones in brass ones, big, massive brass ones. That would be awesome. I would love a president to do that. And that would actually be one of the things that I would love to do as that. Okay. So things are heating up. Let's just move away. Speaking of the Middle East in this, things are heating up in the Middle East. We have, according to the Daily Wire, a U.S. drone strike has hit multiple Iran-backed terrorist leaders, according to several reports that are going on. A U.S. drone strike has killed multiple Iranian-backed terrorist leaders on Wednesday night, which is yesterday, in Baghdad, Iraq, according to initial reports. Strike comes after the Biden administration was widely criticized last week for repeatedly telegraphing its plans to hit certain targets in Iraq and Syria in response to them killing our 3 U.S. soldiers. Okay. Yeah, so apparently a drone struck an SUV that was going through Baghdad, killing 3 in the car. And of them, they assume are 2 leaders of an Iran loyalist Iraq militia. I'm not even going to bother trying to say the names, but in terms of Hezbollah. So things are heating up over in the Middle East. And what's worse is you have this report coming out. Now, take this report for a grain of salt, okay? I'm just going to point this out, that Iran has been, close. Iran has been close to building a nuclear bomb, having the capability of building a nuclear bomb for quite some time. Okay. But here's the thing. Iran capable of building nuclear bomb in 1 week, according to a report. So, yeah. I don't know if anybody remembers when their centrifuges got kicked offline. But anyway, I got into a bit of an argument, kind of a side note, but I got into a bit of a discussion, let's say, with somebody on social media who was basically saying that we got back into the Iran deal and the Iran nuclear deal was the better deal for us to be a part of. And those people, I'm telling you, anyone who thinks that us being in a deal, any kind of a deal with Iran, needs to get kicked, because there is no dealing with Iran. There's no dealing with a lot of people over in the Middle East. What you need to understand is they are a very simplistic, and by simplistic, I don't mean anything mean by it, but they are very simple in terms of their thought process. You are either powerful or powerless as far as they're concerned. Okay? And if you have the power, you need to wield that power with authority and impunity. That's the way it works. You can't sit here and say that, being able to go, being able to do some of the things that you do, you cannot sit here and be passive. There is no passive aggressive over there. It is basically aggressive and being wiped out. That's just the way it is. And we need to figure that out. This current administration is definitely not going to have that happen. All right. So one other thing that has occurred, and I'm sorry, I'm going to announce this right now. Unfortunately, I do not have a pet of the week for tonight. So we're going to bypass that segment. I know it's a fan favorite, but I really got to get more fans to send me in pets in order to be able to do pet of the week. So anyway, one of the things that is coming up tomorrow, in fact, is the Trump versus Anderson in the Supreme Court. So tomorrow, they are scheduled to hear oral arguments. They are scheduled to hear oral arguments in the 14th Amendment case that the Colorado Supreme Court kicked up to the SCOTUS, that SCOTUS agreed to take on. Okay. That's tomorrow. And we need, I really hope this goes the way that I think it should go, which is essentially that there is no problem with him being on the ballot. But I need to, we need to be aware of the fact that this is here. Another Supreme Court item that is somewhere on the docket, I don't have the date, but somewhere on the docket, is with regards to the whole, and I'm not sure if it's actually, now that I think about it, I'm not even sure that it's on the Supreme Court. It might be just in the District Court of Appeals. But in regards to, sorry, I'm trying to do a segue here, and obviously I failed, but the idea of the censorship, there was an article that came out, and this is directly from the Daily Signal. So it's not only the social medias that helped the, oh, okay, hold on. Got to get this. Coco Dominky asks about, and I'm going to switch. Coco Dominky asks about the missing Marines today. Folks, there was 5 Marines that a helicopter went missing. Apparently there's no condition. At the last that I had heard was that there was no condition on the Marines as of yet, but that they had determined where the helicopter went, and that weather is actually hampering some of the rescue / recovery efforts. Okay. That's what I've heard. That's pretty much what I've heard about the missing Marines. So anyway, they were in a helicopter. And yeah, okay. Buddy says they found the crash location, but no word as of yet that I'm aware of in terms of the Marines' condition. So that's what I've heard. All right. Let me get back to the whole censorship thing. So not only have we dealt with censorship in terms of the social media, but apparently Amazon also was attacked by the White House, or pressured by the White House, I should say, that they wanted to suppress books that were skeptical of the COVID-19 vaccines. And this is actually being traced by the Daily Signal at this point. But apparently the book in particular, this is another article that came out. The book that the White House suggested that Amazon should ban, was a book that was put together and self-published, by the way, by an individual who, let's see, was a doctor. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, so they colluded. You can read the article, but they colluded apparently via email, which now somebody's got them, Daily Signal in particular. But apparently the attachment in the email showed the book called "Anyone Who Tells You Vaccines Are Safe and Effective Is Lying." And it was a paperback that was published on March 27th, 2019. It was self-published, by the way. And so these emails are showing that they went through, and that the White House went through and was colluding with Amazon in order to get this book taken off. So the collusion, okay, the collusion is, okay. So the collusion was, it was essentially there. And again, I keep pointing this out. I don't know how many times I have to say it. The Constitution clearly prohibits the government in any way, shape, or form, the government from trying to block or suppress our right to free speech. Now, this includes bringing in things from non-government entities, or what's known as NGOs. They are not allowed to do this, folks. That is a strict violation of the Constitution and the whole idea of freedom of speech. Freedom of the press, freedom of religion, not from religion, but of religion. And so, again, here we have a perfect example of the Biden administration in particular going and trying to suppress free speech. And this, apparently, according to this document and documents obtained by the Daily Signal, emails in particular, this was a cooperative attempt between Amazon and the Biden administration. All right, so last couple of things. First of all, let me just say we've got a lot coming up here on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. First of all, 1 week from today, and even though I don't really get into Valentine's Day, we're going to do it anyway. 1 week from today is a Valentine's Day special. The 14th of February will be on Wednesday. And so you guys are going to see her. I've convinced Mrs. Whiskey she will be here with me next week, next Wednesday for Valentine's Day. What are we going to talk about? I don't know. But my wife and I, I'm going to tell you, she is a fiery personality, so anything goes. Anything will go on the show. And also, by the way, I am considering, although I'm not 100% certain, but I am considering opening up the phone lines to allow you guys to pose questions for us for that. And so, we are going to... we're gonna be together on Valentine's Day on camera in front of you guys. Also, I'm working on a big announcement at the end of the month. Stay tuned for more information as we get closer to the end of the month. But I think you're gonna like what I'm working on. All right, that is my final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button. If you're on Rumble, hit that thumbs up button before you leave, because that is a fantastic way to promote the broadcast, promote the channel. And also, if you are not going into, if you are not on Rumble, head on over there. Get an account. Subscribe to the channel. It's free. It's all free. It doesn't cost any money to do this. If you're on the audio portion of the program, going over to Rumble and seeing the video stuff is fantastic. Okay, fantastic. It is great. So head on over to rumble.com and follow the Whiskey Musings broadcast channel. Until next time, folks, which will be Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Whiskey Musings broadcast, I'm going to say good night, everybody, and have a great time for the rest of your week. And, once again, good night, everybody. Oh, wait. I changed it. Good night, everybody.
The Whiskey Musings broadcast is produced by Active Eye Media, LLC. All rights reserved.